this video, I'm going to step you through how to find percentages of an amount. What I mean by this is, let's say you had the number 65 and you needed to find 48% of 65. This video will step you through some techniques on how to break that kind of problem down and work out what the actual result should be. Now, these kinds of calculations are very straightforward on the calculator, but this video will help you understand what it means to have a percentage of an amount, and it will help you calculate it if you don't have a calculator on you, or even sometimes it'll help you calculate the answer quicker than if you did have a calculator ready to get out. So let's launch right into it. First of all, I want you to think about what it means to say you've got 100% of an amount. So for example, you've got 100% of 25 items. If you've got 100%, it really means you've got all of those things, or all of that amount. You've got the full amount of it. So 100% of 25 is the same as saying, what is all of 25? And so the answer is 25. It would be the same if you were asked what's 100% of 48, it'd be 48. If it was 100% of 120, it would be 120. So the way we'd write this in our books would be 100% of 25 is, so the equal sign, 25. Okay, what does it mean then to have 0% of something? Well, this is like the polar opposite. So this is none of that particular thing. This is no amount of it. So if we have 0% of 25, this is the same as saying none of 25. And so the answer itself is 0. 0% of amounts are the easiest ones to do because the answer is always 0. Next up, 50% of an amount. So this is really talking about half of that amount, or what is the value if it's split equally into 2. So 50% of 25 is the same as saying half of 25, and so the answer would be 12.5. Next up, we've got the amounts 25% of that amount and 75% of that amount. So 25% is the same as saying a quarter or 1/4. And if we look at 50% of 25 and get 12.5, we can find a quarter by halving that. So finding 50% of that 12.5 to get 6.25. So ultimately, 25% of 25 is 6.25. So instead of going straight from 25 and splitting it into 4 parts to get a quarter, we've really taken the 25, split that into 2, and then taken that 12.5 and split that again into 2, essentially splitting the 25 into 4. What about 75%? So 75%, that's another way of saying 3/4. And the great thing about percentages is if you have 50% of the amount already, so 50% of 25, and you also have 25% of 25, you can just add those two together to get 75% of 25. So we take our 50%, our 12.5 from over here. We take our 25%, our 6.25 from over here. Add them together and we get 18.75 as 75% of 25. If we were asked now for 200%, we can think of that in terms of, well, 100% meant the whole amount, so 200% must mean double that amount or twice that amount. So for our example of 25, 200% of 25 is the same as saying double 25, and so that answer is 50. Now we're going to go through the number 35 together, and then after that you'll have a go at your own number. So we'll go through what is 0%, 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%, and 200%. So the easiest one, 0%, is 0. 100% is 35, and then 200% is twice 35, which is 70. Those are the 3 easiest ones to do. The next easiest one is 50%. So think about the number 35, you've got the number 30, and you've got the number 5. So you can split 30 into 2 lots of 15, and you can split 5 into 2 lots of 2.5. let's take one lot of each because we're halving that and halving that, and we get 17.5. Next up, we're going to split 17.5 in half. It's easy to split 16 in half to get 8, right? So 16, but we don't have 16, we have 17, so we're going to split that 1 in half into 0.5, and we're going to have to split this 0.5 in half to get 0.25. So adding together these three halves, this would be 8.5, 8.75. And finally, to get our 75%, we need to add this one and this one, so I'll put a plus in there. Let's add the hundredths, 5 hundredths plus 0 hundredths is 5 hundredths. Then the tenths, 7 and 5 is 12, so carrying the 1. 8, 9, 16, carrying the 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2. We're adding, so we line up our decimal point and put it here. So 75% of 35 is 26.25. Now it's your turn. I'd like you to pause the video and have a go at this and then resume to check your result. How did you go? If you're not sure about something, please go back and review the earlier part of the video or ask me. Next up, we're going to have a look at a concept that requires understanding multiplying by 10 and dividing by 10. So a quick recap on multiplying by 10. It really just means moving a decimal point one place to the right. Because our number system is based on each place value being 10 times bigger or 10 times smaller than the one next to it, this is why multiplying by 10 and dividing by 10 is simply a matter of moving that decimal point. Let's have a look at two examples. So 7 times 10, we know that that is 70. And really that's because the decimal point there hopped one to the right and so landed right here. In this example, we would hop one to the right, leaving us with 0.034. Okay, so 10 times bigger, we're multiplying by 10. So dividing by 10 means 10 times smaller. That means moving the decimal place one to the left. So again, our 7 now divided by 10 means that our decimal point here, instead of moving that way, is moving this way, leaving us with 0.7 or 0.7. And this 0 is really just a little placeholder so that we can see that decimal point a little bit better. And here, dividing by 10, so hopping 1 to the left, leaving us with 0.00034. These were both multiplying by 10 or dividing by 10. But if it was 100, all it would mean was doing times by 10 and then another times by 10. So moving the decimal place twice, in this case to the right, and in this case 2 to the left. If it was 1,000, you got it, just hopping one more over. This is the really neat thing about our number system. Alright, let's shift tack a little bit, but it's related and it's going to really help us. So what we're going to do now is we're going to conceptualize this is 1% of an amount. So we don't know what the amount is, but we're just going to represent it by a little block of that size. So if we then look at 10% of that amount, it means we have 10 blocks. Notice how the difference between having 1% of it and 10% of it, it means we're getting 10 times bigger along here. So we can think of that as times by 10. And conversely, if we went from 10% to 1%, we're actually getting 10 times smaller. Instead of having 10 of these, we only have 1, and so that means we are dividing by 10 in this direction. Looking now at 100%, can you see that that is, if we look at 10%, there's one lot of 10%. And then there's another and another and another and another and another, and we've got 10 lots of 10%. So if we want to go from 10% to 100%, we really are just multiplying by 10. And if we're going from 100% to 10%, we're really dividing by 10. So keep in mind, we haven't put in any amounts yet. These are just looking at relationships between 1%, 10%, 100% of any single amount. All right, have a look back down here at this 1%. We're going to split that up into 10 pieces. That will give us 0.1% of the amount. So here we're dividing it up into 10, which means from here to here we're timesing by 10. And finally here, 0.01% of the amount. So again, we've just divided this up into 10 little pieces, equal pieces. So this is dividing by 10. This is timesing by 10. We know how to do all of these really easily because it's just hopping that decimal point in one direction or the other. So let's look at a real example. So we're going to now consider the number 35. 100% of 35 is of course 35. So when we now want to work out 10%, we know that we're going in this direction, so we need to divide by 10. So if we divide 35 by 10, we're going to get 3.5. If we want 1%, we need to do one more decimal hop, so we get 0.35. To get 0.1%, another decimal hop to get 0.035. And finally, 0.01% is really 0.0035. That's all when we're talking about this original number 35. Of course, if that was a different number, we would have different answers all along here. But see how easy it is to find 100%, 10%, 1%, 0.1%, 0.01%. You can extend this to 0.001%, 0.0000001%. You could even extend it back up the other way to 1,000%, 10,000%, 1,000,000%. It's just a matter of figuring out how many places are you moving the decimal point and which direction are you moving them in. So now it's your turn to practice, and it looks like there's a lot of work on this slide, but really it should actually take you longer to copy out these questions than it will to actually answer them. So please pause the video, copy them into your workbook and answer them, then resume to see how you went. Hopefully that was very straightforward. Okay, now let's look at how this can be useful for us. So let's say we wanted to work out 32% of a particular amount. Now 32% of an amount is just 30% of the amount plus 2% of the amount. And we can break up 30% of the amount into 10% plus 10% plus 10%. We can break up 2% into 1% plus 1%. And we know how to easily find 10% and 1%. So let's work out a particular example. So let's work out 32% of 57. So we know 100% of 57 is 57, so 10% must be 5.7. And we want 3 of those, so we can either go times 3, or we can add together 3 lots of 5.7 like this, lining up the units, lining up the tenths, lining up the decimal points. So for this one, I'm going to do it with using the addition. The next one I'll show you multiplication. So 7 plus 7 plus 7 is 21. We're carrying the 2. 5 plus 5 plus 5 is 15, plus the 2 is 17. And we're lining up this decimal point so that it ends up right there. Alright, 1% of 57, well we know 10% is 5.7, so 1% is 0.57. And we could do 0.57 plus 0.57, very straightforward, or we can do 0.57 times 2. And I'm going to show you this one here now. So 2 times 7 is 14, carrying the 1. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. Here we have 2 decimal places, so in our answer we're going to have 2 decimal places to put the decimal point there. So 30% of 57 is 17.1. 2% of 57 is 1.14, and we are adding these. Now you can put a 0 here, you can put a 0 there, but I've got them lined up nicely, so I'm just going to go 0 plus 4 is 4, 1 plus 1 is 2, 7 plus 1 is 8, and 1 plus 0 is 1, and line up the decimal point again. So my final answer is that 32% of 57 is 18.24. Now it's your turn to have a go, and I'm going to get you set up with the 94 example, and then I'll let you have a go yourself. So you'll want to take this and split it up into 6 lots of 10%, 2 lots of 1%, and 1 lot of 0.1%. So that one you're not even going to have to multiply it by anything. You'll just take that number and add it on. Alright, so pause the video, have a go at these and resume it. If you haven't quite gotten the right answer, have a look through my working out. Otherwise, you're good to go. So hopefully you've ended up with these answers, so 58.374 and 32.209. And I just wanted to point out that since this percentage here is over 100%, so it's 3.9% above 100%, we should be expecting an answer that is bigger than our original number. So that's a good check to see that we're on track. So hopefully through this video, you've got a better appreciation for what it means to have percentages of different amounts and understand that we've got some of these really good reference percentages that we can fall back on. So the 50%, 100%, 0%. And that really helps us understand where other percentages would lie. So please make sure you're practicing this skill, and what this will also mean is that when we get to using the calculator to do these calculations, you've got a really solid understanding of what the calculator is doing. Okay, thanks for watching.